All right, we're recording. All right, this is Mels 603. It is Wednesday, April the 11th. This is week 13. We have 3 more weeks after this one. We've had our last break, so we're going to grind out the last 4 weeks here. This week's topic was accounting and budgeting and reporting. I had 3 separate discussion boards for you this week. Interview an administrator about fundraising, and we're going to go deeper into that in just a few minutes. List 5 most important steps in school-based budgeting. We'll hit that one a little bit later tonight in a PowerPoint. I'm going to go over that. And locate a copy of your school budget. Does it contain federal, state, local, and school funds? What, if anything, is missing? And we'll talk about the law that requires you to have that budget and to make it available. We'll talk about those when we get to our lesson plan for budget laws tonight. This is a law and finance course, and there is obviously finance laws. Now, when I cover those tonight, I'm going to cover them for North Carolina. There are similar laws in South Carolina. Also, I'm going to cover local budget laws from Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools where I retired from. Again, there are the same laws pretty much in every school district in both states, in public school districts. And I just use that as an exemplar because I'm familiar with those. So that's what we're doing this week. All right, let's look and see where we are on our evidence artifacts. All right, on week 13, you should be working on skip task 2. Please remember that you only have to Zoom review task 1 of the skip and task 1 of the cap. Hopefully you'll get that far. Next week, I will lead you through skip task 3 and 4 again. I will do that next week. And then the following week, I will lead you through cap task 1. And if you get that far, you will do a Zoom peer review of that one. The others, you will just, the other 3 of the skip, 2, 3, and 4, you will just do a paper review. So that's what I will do next week. I will cover skip tasks 3 and 4. So tonight, it's just to remind you to continue working on skip task 2. Dr. Stedman is with us. You have his intern shell that you can put work in. You can put it in the class shell. Generally, we don't go to his shell unless I tell you you need to. After I tell you one time what you're missing, and if you give it back to me a second time that's not there, I'll refer you to him. Let me remind you, make sure that you put all prompts and tasks, or tasks and prompts, in your papers when we review them. Our time is getting short, and you're better off for turnaround time. Don't just do, if there's 2 prompts, don't just do 1 and send it in. Do both of them and send it in. It will save us time in the long run. As you can see, we're getting short on time now, and we have a lot to do. So that's just a reminder. So that's where we are on evidence artifacts, and so that leads us into tonight's lesson plan on budget laws. All right, so let's start with those tonight. The first and most important is from 115C 288, and remember, South Carolina has a similar thing, but you can Google North Carolina General Statute 115C, and that's all the laws for public education. I'm going to go over the ones most specific to budget and finance tonight. The first one, of course, is duties and responsibilities of the principal. The principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget, and that's where we need to make sure that all pieces and parts are in that budget. Because according to state law, the principal shall allow parents of children in the school and other interested parties to review and obtain such documents in accordance with Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. If we went to 132, it would say has to be a complete budget. Now, we know that budget should support our school improvement plan, and we know that our master schedule should do that. But for the purposes of public for the public, it must show all forms of where money comes from, whether it's federal, state, local, or school-based. There's basically 4 ways that you have money in a school. You get federal funds or positions, you get state funds or positions, you get local funds or positions from your local LEA, your school district, and then you got school-based funds that you generate through fundraising. And that's why our question tonight from fundraising. That is the 4th type of money that you have control of at the school level, money that you generate yourself. However, there is rules and laws and restrictions on that, and we'll cover those just in a minute. All right. Federal money generally comes to you in the form of positions. It can also come to you in the form of dollars, but those dollars are administered through the central office. That's why I don't have a list of how that works here, because it works differently in every district. Some districts have people that are hired specifically to manage those federal budgets. They're called compliance. Some, that's the duties and responsibilities of others. Some districts have CDCs, career development, or career and technical directors. There's some have special populations coordinators in schools that direct those federal budgets. It's different in every district, but suffice it to say, there is a person above the school level that handles that budget. You do not generally handle, just like Title I funds, those are administered out of the central office. They do not come to the school. Federal monies do not come directly to schools. They come to school districts. They are allocated and accounted for at the central office level. So you need to understand that. Now, those positions also come to the district, and they are allocated through your district. Local schools do not get involved in funds and positions from federal. That is done at the central office level. Now, state money. When we talk about per pupil expenditures, here's a question. Let me get the question right quick. Yeah, in an independent charter school, there isn't. Yeah, that's correct. We're talking about state-funded schools. We're talking about public schools, the 114 LEAs in North Carolina. Now, charter schools are public schools, but they have a board of directors, and that works differently. And each one of those is set up differently. And I wouldn't begin to tell you that I'm an expert on. I've read and talked and researched, and I still don't know that I understand how charter school funding works, because it goes to an independent board or a corporation. And they have a system of rules that they do not publish. They do not have to make those available to people like me. And so I can't speak to how charter schools distribute monies.
Dr. Lamb, very quickly, the Title I monies that go into a local school district, charter schools can get their portion of that money, yeah. But if they choose to do that, they have to follow guidelines just like the public schools, yeah. And most of them will say no because they don't want to follow the guidelines.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. Yeah. Every one of them is different. Right. It's according to if they're a local charter with a local board of directors, or they're part of a national charter organization or corporation, right. And they do not have to make those things public.
Right.
That was the reason I started with this one right here. And maybe I wasn't clear enough. Public schools, the 114 districts in North Carolina, have accounting laws, and they have to make them public. And that's what it talks about right here. You have to make all that stuff public. But that's only for public schools. Other schools do not have to do that. Obviously, private schools don't have to do that. Charter schools, and if they do not take federal money, they don't have to do that. Church schools, those kind. If you don't take federal money, then this does not apply to you. If you want to know how the budget's done in the charter school, you'll have to talk to your head of school, and they're not required to release that information even then. So Hopefully, if you went and asked them for a copy of the school budget, they would be able to give you one, but they're not required to, as you are if you are a public school in North or South Carolina, a regular school district. So back to state monies. When we talk about per pupil expenditures, the state allots money per pupil. They also allot positions based on enrollment, and that comes not to the school, but to the school district, and the school district determines how they will parcel out those positions. But there is state money that comes to the district for the pupils in your building. And let's just use a nice round figure of $7,000. So if you have a school that has 1,000 kids, you bring in $7 million. Now, the state does not send $7 million at the beginning of the school year. The way the modified accrual accounting system works is they make monthly installments, and they only pay after the first month. So schools have to have at least 1 month of operating expenses on hand to launch the school year, and then if they have spent that money in an approved method, they get reimbursed by the state at the end of the month. That's the way school funding works. And so rather than getting $7 million for those 1,000 kids, they get it in 10 monthly installments of $700,000. Now, here's the caveat to that. The state only pays for the students that attend, not the number that are on the roll. It's called ADM, average daily membership. So if your attendance is 95%, you don't get the whole $700,000 for your students that month. You get 95% of that. So that means that you get $665,000 that month. That's why taking attendance is so important. That's also why there's laws about if you fudge attendance, you can get into trouble because there's dollars tied to attendance. I've told you the story. I had an assistant principal who was not turning in suspensions. She was not putting them into power school. Sounds just like a paperwork snafu, just got behind. No, she wasn't putting them in, and she was writing her own suspension forms, not understanding her goal was to reduce the number of reported suspensions. And instead of getting out and working hard, supervising hot spots, having the teachers come to their door, having adequate supervision at ball games and in the lunchroom, she just didn't report her suspensions to the state. The problem with that is because she was making up her own suspension forms, those students were being counted as present. And so the state was paying for students who weren't attending school. When they catch you doing that, and you did it intentionally as she did, not really understanding that it was about money, she freely acknowledged that she did it, but in order to reduce suspensions, not understanding that the state was paying for students who weren't in school. You have to revert that money back to the state. They make you pay it back, and sometimes with interest, and you have to go home. If you misappropriate funds or you do something fraudulently like that, they do not like that. There is no recourse on that one. So again, the modified accrual accounting system says that you get paid in 10th monthly installments. The monies that comes to your district for your school from the state comes in 10 monthly installments, and it only comes at the rate of attendance for that month. That's why there's a report that has to be filed every month from your school district, and it's electronically transferred from your school to the district, and they electronically transfer it to the state. It's called the Principal's Monthly Report, or PMR, and that is about your attendance, and that's about how much money you get, how much money your school brings in for the district. And so if your attendance gets below about 95%, your district's going to have you in on the rug. You're costing them money. Most districts, the minimum acceptable attendance in school is 95%, and if you can't make that that 95% benchmark, you will have to write an addendum to your school improvement plan to figure out a way to get your attendance up, because you're costing money. And so once the first month is paid for by the local school district, they send the voucher to the state. Basically, it's a purchase order type system, and if you spent the money correctly, they reimburse you and you have money to pay for the second month, and so on and so forth. So the important thing to remember there is ADM, average daily membership, translates into a document called a PMR, Principal's Monthly Report. Now, along with that PMR, out of Power School, they're going to pull another report called a SAR, S-A-R, a school activity report. And what they're going to do there is make sure that you conform with all the state guidelines on teacher certification, teacher qualifications, and they're two different things, and class size limits, and planning time and duty-free time. All of those have to be represented in your master schedule, as you know. And your master schedule, when it's populated with students, will generate a school activity report. And the state checks that before they send you your money as well. If you're out of compliance, say you don't have enough planning time in your schedule, or you got too many kids in a class, or you've got teachers teaching out of field or you don't have highly qualified, but you could have, you've just organized poorly, they can hold your money until you comply with your master schedule. That's why we beat you up so hard on that master schedule in the OMA. Now you're beginning to understand why you've got to look at it from federal law first, then state law, then local board policy, then best practices, and then teacher input, and in that order, because if you get it out of order and you get something out of whack in your master schedule, you've got to fix that before the state will send money for your school. That's how they enforce those policies. The way the state enforces their policies on legal requirements for for schools in terms of class size, teacher certification, teacher qualifications, teacher planning time, duty-free time, the way that they enforce those laws that they have is monthly. A school activity report is generated out of Power School along with the principal's monthly report. And if the school activity report is in compliance, they will reimburse at the amount of the attendance level of students that month, average daily membership. And so that's why you've heard me preach this sermon over and over. If you've got a bad master schedule, that means you had a bad process. You've got to fix your process. And if you don't, the state will do it for you, or you won't get your money, or the person that they replace you with will fix the master schedule process. There's somebody, and they do it every month. It's not we got it okay. We've got our master schedule at the beginning of the year, and then we can go back and change it the way we want to later on. Oh no, they run it every month, and you better not get caught intentionally defrauding them by saying that Dr. Stedman's got 20 in his room and I've got 20 in my room, and then when they come out and do an audit, he's got 40 and I've got 10. That better not be the case either. What's on that master schedule that's fed into Power School better be what they find when they walk down the hall and count heads in the classrooms. And they do that quite often.
Dr. Lamb, need to know too, as a principal of a school, your failure to report properly, or your failure to turn in, if it goes to the state and there's problems with it, you could be the one responsible for the superintendent not getting their check as well, and that does not look good.
That doesn't make him happy at all.
Right.
So if it's bad enough that that not only does your school district not get the money for your school, the superintendent's check can be encumbered. That will not make him happy. So we're playing for keeps here. This is real. You've got to understand that this is not an area that you can use discretion and make mistakes. You know, one of the things that you have to understand about the law is there is no discretion. Well, you know, I used my discretion and made this decision not to put those suspensions in. That's not the law. And there's money tied to this, and jobs and positions. So you can't make these mistakes. These are unforgivable sins. So that's how it works the same way in South Carolina. And so this is how funding works when it comes to your school district and then to your school. Each local administrative unit, that's each LEA, establishes and maintains an accounting system. So what that means is your local district will also runs in a modified accrual accounting system. And so they don't give you all the money up front. They give it in installments. You have to justify your expenditures, and if you don't, they will come and get you. Let me see. I did a mute. Let me unmute Dr. Stedman. All right. Dr. Stedman should be unmuted. All right. So daily deposits, any money that comes into your school, it's not just a good idea and local policy guideline. It's state law in both states that you receipt all money accepted into your school and deposit it daily. And that includes gate receipts at ball games. You're supposed to use tickets, which serves as a receipt. You're supposed to count those tickets at the end of the night from the ticket sellers and do a reconciliation and take that money to the bank. You can't keep money overnight, and you have to receipt all monies received. That's every day. Every year you will be audited in the spring. Every year you will be audited in the spring, and you again, your bookkeeper will keep up with all of it, but you better know. Now that audit will be based on debt payments, making sure that your local accounts, that you don't owe everybody in the community. I inherited a school one time as principal that was way in the hole, and I mean big time money in the hole. And what they have been doing to hide that was taking, they had some endowment money for some scholarships for students, and they were counting that endowment money on the asset side of the ledger. But come to find out, as soon as I got there, I asked for an audit and found out that we were about $250,000 in the hole. We owed everybody in town. We hadn't paid for annuals. We hadn't paid for proms. We hadn't paid for a lot of things for a long period of time, and we were using that endowment money to balance the ledger. But, you know, my first clue is there was a line of people waiting to see me my first day as principal at that high school wanting to get paid. You know, the venue that did the prom, the pictures, those kinds of things.
Uniforms.
Uniforms. The sporting goods company owed them $100,000. Those are the kinds of things, because the booster club had run up big debt. Nobody was minding the store on them. You say, but Dale, how in the world? But, you know, a year with nobody paying attention in a big high school with 3,000 students, you can run up an incredible amount of debt in a very short period of time. So when you become principal of your first school, first thing you need to ask for is an audit to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. They will audit every spring. But sometimes those audits are just looking at the balance sheet. Sometimes they're more in depth than others. They knew from the spring audit how bad things were, and that's why I was the new principal there. And so I asked for another audit then so that I would start fresh when we would know where I was starting from. But the reason why the principal was replaced at that high school, the spring audit that didn't come out till about May, said, oh boy, they're in the hole. They had been hiding it with that endowment money. But these are the kinds of things that sometimes you walk into. Let me answer a question here. So how did I fix it? Well, it was very simple. We started, the first thing was the fix part of the problem is that we would rent venues for the prom that didn't cost money rather than go to a hotel. That was the year that Erickson Stadium, which is now Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, opened. They have a place that you can hold a prom there, and they'll do it for free as part of their community initiative. That'll save you tens of thousands of dollars. We started receiving annuals. We only delivered annuals to people who paid for them up front. We added the price of what people owed. We held their diplomas until they paid. I took a storage room up on the second floor, cleaned it out, got with a wholesale vendor, and stocked it with candy. And all the clubs and organizations that wanted to do a fundraiser had to come through me, so I got my cut up front rather than the school fundraisers. No more private school fundraisers. We fixed the vending so that Pepsi got their money immediately. We held some fundraisers and some community events to raise money. We generated money. If something cost $1, we charged $2. It took 2 years, but we got out of the hole. But everything we did every day had to be about paying off debt, putting controls in place where the money couldn't walk out the door or not come in the door, making sure that we actually charge people for coming to the ball games instead of just letting them walk in, that we had your supervision schedule is your extracurricular duties. Part of that is who's going to be the ticket takers, who's going to be who's going to do all that. They didn't even have that. People just walking in football and basketball games for free. I mean, literally tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, we did 2 Big Fridays each of the first 2 seasons, where we went down to took our football team to Memorial Stadium. That's a big payoff if you'll do that. And of course, the football coaches want to do home games, but in Charlotte, if you do Memorial Stadium, it's not really a home game, but you make a lot of money doing that. You can make $25,000 doing a game at Memorial Stadium. And if you can play at Memorial Stadium as well as you can at home. And so there's ways to get your money back if you're paying attention and make money. It's not easy, and it's got to be an everyday effort. But that's how you do it. The trick is not to get in that hole to begin with. Make sure that you have a supervision schedule where you know who's going to be at those events and who's going to be selling tickets and taking the door, and you're going to have people there that monitor the exits and don't let the kids go open the back door and everybody come walking in for free, that kind of stuff. You have somebody that on supervision on the back door. So, everybody's got to come in the front and pay. It's just that simple. You'd be amazed how much more money you'll make at a basketball game, especially when you're doing 4 games one site. And you're going to have several thousand people coming through your gym that night. If you make them pay, it's amazing how quick that money adds up. Football game, you got 12,000 people showing up for a Friday night game. That's $60,000 at $5 a person. It's amazing how quick you can make money up if you actually put the controls in place and management routines that you're supposed to have.
Dr. Lamb, another thing too, sports in high school especially, athletics is that's one of the areas that costs you so much and it's so expensive, and everybody's team is important, and every coach thinks that every year they want something new. You
New
just have to put them
uniforms every year.
on a rotating schedule, and everybody can't get everything they want every year, and that happens a lot of times. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, but some years you don't get a piece of the pie.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can't have new uniforms every year. And you can't, and the thing you do is you pass your uniforms down from your varsity to your JV team. You don't be buying new uniforms for the JVs. And you got washers and dryers in your athletic complex for a reason. You wash them and keep them cleaned up, and they'll last you more than one season. Don't let them kids take them home. Mama will, after 2 or 3 times with mama, they'll be done. You take care of your stuff. You tell them up front, all right, you got new uniforms this year. You're not going to get them. So, you're going to have to wear them this year and next. 3rd year, you'll get a new set of uniforms.
And band is the same thing too. Band uniform.
Yeah. And what always used just to grind me up on the band, at least the sports teams would be wearing them. The band just grind me up in that the first 2 or 3 games when it was still hot, they'd be out there in T-shirts and shorts. Where's them uniforms I paid a fortune for? Well, they're too hot. I don't care. Get them a fan. They're going to be wearing them uniforms. Spend a fortune on them things. But yes, that kind of stuff. But the biggest thing is putting your procedures in place so that you've got the back door covered on the gym. You've got the back gates at the ball game covered where students can't come crawling in or over. You've got people watching that. You've got ticket sellers. You make sure that you're selling them tickets and collecting money. You don't let half the neighborhood in for free, or all the neighborhood in for free. You do some controls with your supervision schedule. You don't just have a sign up where people can show up if they want to or not. You have people with assigned duties, and you do some physical management. That's part of your legal responsibility as a principal. You're not supposed to let people just walk off with your stuff or not pay. You're supposed to have control over those uniforms. You don't give them away at the end of the year. That was one of the things that I found when I got there. What they do is they let them take them home and wash them. At the end of the year, they'd be so, well, we just gave them to the kids. They were, No, you collect them up at the end of the game and you wash them yourself and take care of them. And we're not giving them away at the end of the year. These have got to last more than 1 year. See, those are the kinds of things that you don't know until you get into this business. That there's a lot of outgo, and there's a lot of people in the community that are more than willing to take advantage of you, that just want your money.
Exactly.
So you've got to make sure that you institute all these policies, and you've got to make sure that that people are following through with it. That teachers aren't running their own fundraisers and collecting money and holding it and those kinds of things. You need to be responsible. Now, PTA and PTO. PTA is supposed to be a national organization, and they have some rules and guidelines. PTO is not. That's a school-based committee, and if the PTO absconds with the money, which happens every day, you can be held accountable as a principal for failure to exercise financial control. You can delegate the responsibility for fundraising to your PTO. You can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. If the money gets gone, it's on you as the principal. Let me say that again. You can delegate the activity to your PTO, but not the responsibility for following all the financial rules and regulations. And so if somebody absconds with all the money from the PTO, you're going to be held accountable for that. They're going to get you for failure to maintain financial control. And that, the best case scenario, you get demoted back to AP. Worst case, you go home. So you can't just say, boy, this I don't have time, or I don't want to accept the responsibility or the work or the liability for fundraising. I'll just delegate that to the parents, and we'll be no, you're going to be held accountable for them. I never like doing that because parents are a whole lot more likely to abscond with the money than people working for you. And you've got some control over the people working for you. Especially in small towns, it's sometimes hard to get the police force to go out and try to get that money back. It's everybody, and those people always, community members, want to cut deals. You better be on top of that. All right, annual independent audit, we've already talked about that. You have to produce all books and records. You have to have all your receipts and game stubs and all those things. Each school has a treasurer. That's your financial secretary. Your financial secretary is responsible to account for all checks and all monies coming in. And all the money has to be deposited by the financial secretary and accounted for by them. Special funds, and that's what we've been talking about here for the last few minutes. Those are under the purview of the state. That's what I was just telling you. If you're letting people in for free, you're basically allowing state's money to be stolen, because right here it says special funds of the individual schools, not limited funds realized from gate receipts of interscholastic athletic competitions, scale of school annuals, newspapers, and dues of student organizations. The state says that's their money. You don't have the right to say, no, we're not going to collect that, or we're not going to get that, or we're not going to pay attention to that. That's the state's money. That's what that supervision schedule that we ask you to do in the OMA is all about. Are you supervising at ball games and assigning positions so that money won't get absconded with, or it won't get collected to begin with? Now, in North and South Carolina, you have unempowered school boards. That means that they can't levy their own taxes. There's some special exemptions to that, but in general, schools have to go to the county commissioners and get in line with everybody else for tax monies. We've already talked about the problem with all of these incentive programs to bring business and industry to our states. They usually give tax breaks. The money that comes to schools in general, public schools, is from property taxes from corporations. Property taxes from individual homeowners generally go for basic service, fire, ambulance, police, water, sewer, that kind of stuff. The money that basically comes to schools through the county commissioners or the town commissioners in the city district come from corporate property taxes. And when you give all these companies, for example, in Rutherford County, which is one county over from where I am tonight, I'm in Cleveland County tonight. I have a house as well in Rutherford County, about 20 minutes from here, besides my house in Mecklenburg County. In Rutherford County, they have a big Facebook plant. They're just doubling the size of it now. The construction's nearly done. It's just a server farm. They don't employ that many people, but they gave them a big tax break on the property. And so the county is about to go broke. They can't fund their schools because they're not bringing any revenue from Facebook, and they spend a lot of money to get them. Not only do they give them tax breaks, they actually spent money out of their coffers to buy the property, tear down the old mill, develop the property, and then handed it over to Facebook, thinking it would generate a lot of jobs, not understanding that server farms or data farms don't employ that many people. It's just mostly security, maintenance, and custodial, minimum wage jobs. There's only about 25. There'll probably be about 50 now. There's not that many technician level jobs, and those people commute from Charlotte. And so one of the things that really hurts schools is all these financial incentive packages that local counties give to corporations moving in. That means that there's no money for schools. And that's hard, and that's what's causing a lot of the financial distress in public schools nowadays. Is every time you see XYZ corporation come into your state, and they got a financial incentive package from the state and from the county, understanding that county money comes directly. That's money that schools won't get. All right. In 1965. Civil Rights Act was passed in North Carolina. In 66, the state got out of the school building business. They said, we're not going to build any more buildings. It's too big a hassle and heartache because of the furor over integration of schools, new schools being built. And so the state of North Carolina in 1966 got out of the school building business and left that to the individual counties. So capital, which is buildings, is the responsibility of the local, the LEA, the local education, the county school, the city school. There is no state money coming for that. The only exception to that is the lottery. In North Carolina and South Carolina, you have a lottery, but that's just pork barrel money for special projects. It is not a funding stream. You don't get X number of dollars. That's only pork barrel projects, basically, rewarding your friends kind of thing. It is not a funding plan. The one in North Carolina was set up as a result of the Leandro decision. We've talked about Leandro before. The courts did not change the funding formula in North Carolina to give poorer districts more money, and because they have less ability to pay or add to the budget locally, they did not do that. They started the lottery, which in general has been a complete failure in terms of funding local school districts. So where you have low tax rate and you have incentives given to corporations, there's what really suffers the most is capital. Capital is buildings and technology. Technology falls under capital. And so that's where schools really get in trouble, or school districts, is facilities. Now, for those of you in charter schools, this one I have here, 521A, this is about you. Local boards of education in local school districts, city and county districts, are not required to build you a school. They only have to give you classrooms. This is the law that says they must provide classrooms. And so that's why most charter schools, when they start up, end up in used trailers from the local school district. All they have to give you is classrooms. They don't have to give you anything else. And so what most districts have done for charter schools that have applied for some sort of capital for facilities is they give them used trailers, because the law says they do, but they don't have to give you any more than that. But if you want to build a building in your district, you either finance it through the money given by the county commissioners, or you let a bond that has to be paid back by the county commissioners with local tax money. There is no entity in the state or North or South Carolina where they'll come in and build you a building with state funds.
Dr. Lamb, with the charter schools, a lot of, I guess it's through the county commissioners, they buy them. A lot of the disbanded Kmart buildings and things like that have been converted into charter schools. And one more thing, I actually lived through Leandro. My county was one of the 5 counties that benefited from it, and the county where that case started from, Hope County, that was my first job in education, was in that county. So it's my neighboring county, so I'm very familiar with the funding from that.
Yeah. So basically what that did is it didn't change the formula of how the state funded schools.
No.
It just started the lottery and gave some block grant money, what we call pork barrel money. So in general, the quality of the capital in your district, be buildings, be technology, is up to the local. States will come bail you out is the deal here. And so what we have all the time is parents wondering, I pay all this state tax, how come my kid doesn't have technology in his building? Well, state tax money doesn't come back to the schools in the form of capital. That's all local. So when your local county commissioners or town commissioners voted this big incentive package to get this company to come, that's why you have no technology or no new building for your kids to go to school in. You took it from them.
And this is the time of the year too. Right now is when county commissioners are looking at what they're going to give to your school districts. And I will tell you, out of the 114 school districts, or the 110 North Carolina, the county that I'm from, is out of 100, we're 99th in what the county commissioners give per pupil in expenditures. You need to really look and see what your counties are doing.
And one of the reasons why Dr. Stedman's county, which is Robinson County, one of the reasons why the schools get so little is because they have a community college there.
And we have a university and a community college,
understanding that the county commissioners in Robinson County have to fund the capital needs of that community college as well.
And I serve on that board as a trustee, and we just met with them 2 weeks ago asking for our piece of money. Well, we asked for $3 million for this coming year from the county commissioners. College, yeah.
So you understand that you have you're double damned if you're in one of the 42 county, one of the 58 counties in North Carolina. But it's even more than that. There are 58 community and technical colleges, but many of them will have a satellite campus in the neighboring county that doesn't have a community college. They'll have a satellite campus, and those campuses they get in line just like the public schools do to get their money from the county commissioners. So the conflict now in public school funding in North Carolina and to some extent in South Carolina, which has the area schools and some other things in South Carolina and some small colleges, but more specifically in North Carolina, the conflict arises between the public schools in that district, whether they're K-12 or whether they're post-secondary, they're community colleges, because they're in competition for the same dollars from the local the local budget from the county commissioners. And again, that's money collected for property taxes for both residential and commercial. So every time you see an incentive package passed out by your county, understand that that's money coming straight from capital needs for the school system. And every time they give more money to the community college, that means less money for you in public schools. At some point, we're going to have to talk about consolidating community colleges in this state, or maybe going into a partnership, which we're already starting to do with early college, where we start putting instead of building new buildings or more buildings, and taking some buildings out of service, we start putting students on these community college campuses, which are basically the seats are at about 30% right now. Let me say that again. When I say the seats are at about 30%, the full-time equivalent of community colleges across North Carolina as an average is about 30%. That means that they operate at about 30% capacity of the seats that they have available. So there's a lot of space on these campuses. And so some districts like Charlotte-Mecklenburg, rather than build more schools in certain areas, they're doing more early colleges. And I noticed they've got one on I think they've got 4 early colleges now on the satellite campuses of Central Piedmont Community College. They're utilizing that space. As a property owner in Rutherford County, it's not my primary residence, but they tax me the same as if I lived there every day. My suggestion in Rutherford County has been and will continue to be that tomorrow or the next day, they ought to close the 3 high schools, move all those students over to the community college. You got plenty of room for them. The 3 high schools combined don't have but about 2,400 students. I had a much bigger high school than that in Charlotte. They could put all of them on the community college campus. They wouldn't close those. They'd move the middle school students up, the elementaries, and they could probably close 8 or 10 elementary schools for next season, utilizing this and basically utilizing the space on the community college. Think of the cost savings that they would have if they would do that in terms of the capital needs. Now, but then we get into all the curriculum people, and you know how I feel about curriculum people, even though I'm married to one. Then you get into all the curriculum people that start whining and complaining about school size. There's an efficiency in schools and scale, and you can organize into smaller units inside of a larger facility. Smaller schools only work if you change the instructional modality. So you can do that in a larger space. We're going to have to start being more creative in how we utilize our space and how we utilize our funding. The money is not going to come. It's dwindling. It's going the wrong way, and it's not coming back. And the crisis in public schools in North and South Carolina is not the money coming from the state. It is, but the bigger that's a problem. But the crisis is there's no money coming from the counties, and that's what pays for buildings and technology. And so you're going to have to be smarter. You've got these campuses in your county that are sitting there at 30% capacity. You need to be moving some school students over there and closing some facilities. That's what you need to be doing. That's the, that will work within existing state laws in both states, and we're going to be forced to do those things. Now, is that optimum? I didn't say it was optimum, but you got to pay the light bill or you can't stay in business. And so that's where we are. One of the things that I see is really affecting the quality of instruction inside of schools is all the local money is having to go to capital, and we're not hiring nearly as many local teachers as we used to, specialists in different areas, and to reduce class sizes. School districts used to hire a good many extra teachers. The color of their check, this is Dr. Stedman and I are dating ourselves, but when we first got into business, there was 3 colored checks, and when people got their check every month, there was no direct deposit or online banking. You got a check every month, and they were one of 3 colors.
Yellow, green, and
blue, light blue.
Yeah.
Yellow, green, and light blue.
Yep.
Federal was green, state was light blue, and local was yellow. And a lot of teachers got a yellow check because they were paid for locally. If we still had that, we still pay from those 3 different accounts. We do it electronically now, but if we still send a paper check to that teacher every month, we would hardly see any yellow checks anymore from the local because it's all they can do to pay for buildings and technology. It's really hurt our ability to put extra staff in schools to work with students. And that's my if these curriculum people that talk about us operations people not being interested in curriculum and instruction and what goes on inside, I'm telling you, the money affects what goes on inside the building. If you're having to spend every dollar that you've got locally trying to keep the door open and the lights on, you can't spend money on extra teachers and specialists to come in beside the building and work with our children. That's my complaint. I'd like to see us back at a time when we had 4 or 5 extra teachers on every campus, reading specialists, remedial, or an extra teacher here. We wouldn't have to have a combination class, or an extra teacher there where we could get the numbers down from 30 to 25 or 22. That we don't do that anymore because we don't have locally paid teachers because we can't afford them. We're just trying to keep the lights on and the doors open. These are things that you need to understand about how school funding works. The state getting out of building buildings was huge, and it has repercussions even today. We're still operating as we did basically decades ago. We're going to have to be smarter with our facilities. We're going to have to do more things virtually. We're going to have to do economy of scale where we may not offer every course every time, and we may not offer it at every school. We may have to rotate around. We may have to do some things virtually. But the advent of community college really has taken a lot of money out of K-12 public education. It's the duty of the local boards of education providing adequate school buildings. All right, and then those are the relevant state laws. I'm looking at my time here. CMS board policies, you'll have similar in your LEA. This is if you're in just a straight school district and not a charter or private school. Basically, it has rules for fundraising, and that's why I had you go out and find them. Remember, there's 4 funding streams at the local school: federal, state, local, and then money you raise at the individual school level. But there are state and district policies on fundraising. You should find them. They all have to be approved beforehand, but there will be policies. In this one particularly, in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, all activities have to be approved before they start. You have to submit your request during the first month of school. It has to be approved by the superintendent. It goes through the principal. They have certain things that they want to see. You don't see some of the more popular things on the list. You have to get a special exception if you want to have a candy fundraiser. These are the things that they want to support here. Can't use instructional time to do fundraising or collect monies. You can't use your vocational department or CTE department, whatever your school, you can't use that to raise money. Pre-numbered tickets have to be used in athletic events, have to be a reconciliation, have to be a ticket seller's report. You have to have control security on your gates to make sure people don't walk in, because basically that means you're allowing people to steal state money. Everything has to be night deposited, receipts, use of funds raised. All funds has to be used to benefit the school program. You have to tell them beforehand, and you can't do something else with it other than what you said you were going to do. There's rules about employees, about them selling things or working out of school business. I inherited a high school teacher who was running a photography business out of the photography lab at the school, a private business. Can't do that. There's rules about employees tutoring and working, for parents and students' families. You can't for pay tutor students, your own students. Can't do that. There's all kind of rules on money and compensation that go along with fundraising. You need to know what they are. You can't solicit customers or clients or engage in any private business on Board of Education property. That means you can't be a realtor and take phone calls during the day in your business for your business at school. Can't be doing that. So you need to make sure that whenever you get your job that you look into all these things in your district. You understand how money comes and how it has to be spent. You understand the audit. You understand that somebody's going to be looking over you. You understand that the state says that you will create a budget and a master schedule every year, and a school improvement plan, and they have to be linked together. And if somebody from the news media comes in and says, I want to see your budget, you have to produce it. And what they're going to be looking for is to make sure that you're spending the money on the initiatives from your school improvement plan that you said you were going to spend them on. And that your master schedule, if you said we're going to work on math this year, that your master schedule aligns with that, and that you're putting more time or effort or energy into math. You're going to have people who come walking in and want to make sure that your budget supports your initiatives. That's what they're looking for. And so you need to be prepared for that. You need to understand that it's not private information. It becomes public if you're a public institution. Moving quickly, I wasn't really planning to do a lot with these tonight anyway. All right, this one is about school-based budgets. This is how kind of the process that you would go through to develop one. Your sources, federal, state, local, and its property taxes. Most places don't do sales taxes. Some city districts, and the reason I have that, some city districts, because they're limited in property, will initiate like a half cent for schools, but that's generally only in city districts. County ones, it's property taxes, commercial and residential. That's where your money comes from for schools. And then building level income, grants, foundations, partnerships, booster clubs, and fundraising. That's number 4. Federal, state, local monies coming from the county commissioners, and the money you raise, that's the 4 right there. 3 effective budgetary planning keys to, I've got 3. Your educational plan. What that means is your school improvement plan. You make sure that your budget supports your school improvement plan. You match your income to program activities. You don't plan anything you don't have money in hand for. Just like when we do those marketing plans and action plans and growth, you don't put any specific activities in you don't have money for. You match your income programs to your activities. 3 keys to efficient budgeting, income generation strategies, expenditure controls, and accounting and auditing procedures. That's what we've been talking about tonight. So this one follows along with what I've talked to you tonight about the law. This is a step-by-step guide that walks you through what you need to do based on the laws that I covered earlier tonight. So this one is for schools. Now, this one, the next one is for your toolbox. This one is not for you yet. This is when you get to go to the central office. This one speaks to school business administration, budgeting, accounting, fundraising, bonds, and those things on the central office level. Now, again, I'm not advocating that this is something that you'll need right now. This is something you should download, put in your toolbox. And it speaks to the bigger things like vision, infrastructure, standards, advocating for schools. Advocating for schools is like bonds, things like that. This is for when you go to the central office. I've included this one, and I've named it School Business Administration. This is central office stuff. And it's a lot of vision and mission and a lot of, statements about beliefs and those kinds of things. When you're budgeting at the central office level, there's the micro political considerations that come into play, and a lot of that factors in. It's not just we're going to do this and that. You have to bring people along with your vision, and you have to basically partner with the business community in your district. And so that's what this is all about. It's more about that than the actual. The dollars and cents comes later in this one. But this is more a primer for you when you get to the central office level. But as I said, the other one, this one is right down the line, what you should be doing. It talks about who the key players are, and talks about assistant principals, their role, your band director, your athletic director, because those are your 2 biggest expenditures, as Dr. Stedman and I pointed out tonight. Ask any high school principal, and that, just like both of us were, and we'll tell you those are the ones where your money can either come or go. Those are the 2 biggies. That's why I've got it on this slide. So those of you in elementary, thank your lucky stars you don't have to deal with those things. Because as you can see, I had hair until I became a high school principal. It might be that it was 30 years ago, but it's immaterial. I still claim that it was because I was a high school principal that it fell out, dealing with these things. And so this is a really good one, even if I didn't have it in here. And so everything that I've talked about tonight is in here, and more, but it's in a very logical sequence. And so it summarizes tonight's lecture. I always just like to talk to you rather than read you the slides. All right. Questions you have about school-based budgets, about fundraising, those kinds of things, anything that I can answer for you on those. I hope that we've given you a basic overview of how it works. I could spend months getting in the weeds on this stuff. It's kind of hard to do it in an hour, but that's the time that we have allotted. But this PowerPoint will kind of fill in the gaps for you if you have questions. You've got some good reading in your textbook, but if you will follow this PowerPoint, it's pretty good in terms of telling you what to expect when you get your job at the school level. Dr. Stedman, you have anything else tonight?
Yeah, I've sent them emails. If you go into Task Stream and complete what needs to be completed in Task Stream for me to look at. So if there's anything, your dispositions, anything that, just look and see, is there anything that needs to be completed in your Task Stream account at this time? So just check that.
Okay. Dr. Stedman, I see that Dr. Laws
I saw. I was looking.
All right,
at
so
that.
he'll be available on that Friday, what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so
That's
Friday
good.
will be more loaded than I thought, but guess what? I'm just going to do what I have to do while I'm there.
That'll
So,
be fine. Thursday and Friday, we'll set
yeah,
aside that time,
yeah,
and do those.
yeah.
All right. If anybody doesn't have any more questions, I appreciate you coming out with us tonight. I will see you next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Work hard on that skip. Remember, the more you get done this semester, the easier it's going to be for you this summer, because we're going to have 9 tasks due in 10 weeks. And even I can do that math. It's going to be a time this summer, but it'll be fun. So you need to get on it.
And
So,
if they need me to look at anything, all they got to do is put it in there and I'll look at it.
yep. All right. Y'all all have a good evening. Thank you, Dr. Stebbin, for joining us tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Good night, everybody.